Hello everyone and welcome to this very first tutorial for Realmotion Engine, a node-based real-time rendering engine for generative and interactive projects. In this video, we will take a quick overview of the basic interface element of the software so you can be more comfortable with the UI and start getting creative. First of all, let's talk about the usual menus, which you'll find on the upper left corner of your Realmotion Designer window. The File menu is where you'll manage your graphs and project files. Here you will find the usual options regarding file management, such as creating a new project, opening a previous file, and saving your current work. The Edit menu is where you'll find the Undo and Redo options, as well as your Preferences panel, in which you can customize your system and UI configurations. The System Configuration window lets you adjust your sound and display options, as well as your file management preferences, such as your save options. The Project menu is where you can control and configure your project. You can set the resolution of the canvases and the behavior of a project. More than one project configuration may exist per project. Canvases are a set of centralized resolutions that are accessible anywhere in the project. Working with canvases prevents unwanted resolution changes. The Windows menu is where you can toggle all the graph panels on and off, so if you close the panel by accident, this is where you can toggle it back on. As its name suggests, the View menu lets you control your view options. Finally, the Help menu contains links to the online and offline documentation, as well as the support page. The toolbar icons give you quick access to some of the most regularly used options. Now let's go back to the File menu and demonstrate how to create a new project. The New Project window will prompt you to select a source project, which can be a template or a sample. You can also simply choose an empty project and start from scratch. You will need to choose a name and a location path for your project. Creating a project from a template will set you up with a basic pipeline depending on your needs. Selecting a sample as a source project lets you start with a pre-made project setup of your choosing, whether it be a ready-to-go setup for mapping, a Connect detection module, or a visual effect. We'll go to the Samples menu under VFX, Particles, and Attract 3D Sample to create a project that looks like this. A visual effects sample does not need any modification to work, though you are, of course, encouraged to modify it as you need. These samples and templates are loaded in what we call the Graph panel. As Realmotion is a node-based engine, the Graph panel is where most of the action happens. This will be explained in more detail throughout the tutorials, but a graph is basically a file containing a set of interconnected boxes. A project may include multiple graphs on different hierarchical levels. Within a graph, you can mix and match boxes, which are the smallest construction blocks inside Realmotion. Then you can manage the connections between them, adjust their settings, and create all kinds of amazing visual effects. The Toolkit panel is located in the top left corner of your window, right below the toolbar. This panel allows you to simply drag and drop a box, a graph, or a template into your graph panel. The Asset Manager is a useful tool that lets you navigate video, audio, texture, and graph files contained inside your project's assets folder, your installation folder, or any folder you manually set as a media library. You can also filter those files by type or location for easier navigation. To add an asset to your project, simply drag and drop it into your graph panel. It's possible to drag an asset directly from Windows Explorer. However, it's strongly recommended to add all assets into the Assets folder, which is found in your project's directory. The Hierarchy panel is situated at the bottom left corner of your window. It is divided into two sections, the top being the project tree and the bottom being the sunburst diagram. Both serve the same function, with the sunburst diagram being a graphical representation of the project's hierarchy. They allow navigation through the different graphs and timelines within your project. Simply double-click on the name of a graph or timeline in the project tree to access it. You can also hover your cursor over a section of the sunburst diagram to see its content and double-click to open it. You can double-click directly on the graph to open it as well. Pressing the backspace or the B key returns you to the previous graph unless you are already viewing the root graph, which is the parent of all the graphs. The root graph is always situated at the center of the sunburst diagram. The Properties panel displays the properties of the selected box. It allows you to change the parameters and in some cases to enable or disable the inputs and outputs. Most of the parameters can be edited while the project is running. The box description panel shows a brief description of the selected box, as well as a selection of related boxes or samples for you to explore. If you scroll through the box description panel, you will find a link to the full documentation about the selected box. The error log panel detects errors on load or on runtime and lists them in 3 categories according to their importance. The first error type is the warning, which you will get when Realmotion detects an unwanted behavior that may affect your project, but won't stop it from running. The second error type is the adequately named error, which happens when a problem prevents your graph from running at all. The final and rarest is the critical error. You only get this error when the system itself is compromised. You can double-click on the error to find its source, as the graph panel will automatically go to the related box. If the error is not related to a box like a configuration error, the root graph will appear instead. The console panel lists the error and technical messages from Realmotion and those generated by the user. We'll look at the possibilities of the console panel in a later tutorial. Now the preview panel shows you the output of either the back buffer, which is the final output of your project, or the selected box. You can control it with the preview slider, which you'll find in the toolbar. Beside the preview slider, you'll find a toggle button named Show Alpha. This button is very useful to see a visual representation of the alpha channel in the preview panel. This can be a useful tool since many of this channel's uses are for visual detection. By activating the Show Statistics button in the toolbar, you can see the CPU and GPU usage of the selected box overlaid on your preview window. This can be very useful for optimization purposes. In a dual-screen workspace setup, the secondary display button is great to show the back buffer output on your second display. If the back buffer output appears on your main display, simply right-click and select Move to Left or Move to Right to move it to your second display. The timeline panel works similarly to timelines found in various softwares, such as Adobe Premiere. You can add media, content, or graphs and activate or deactivate them at specific points in time. The timeline will be covered in detail in its own tutorial. The remote panel lets you connect to a server. Simply type in your server IP address, then choose a valid port, and select Connect. Then select the Launch button to remotely deploy your project on your server. Visit our website to learn about our G-Series servers. Finally, all the UI elements discussed can be moved and resized as needed. Simply move your cursor to the top of the desired panel, then click and drag it where you want. To resize a panel, click and drag near any of its corners. This concludes the interface overview of Realmotion Engine. Our next tutorial will cover all of the basic notions you need to start your own project. If you need more information about Realmotion Engine or encounter a bug that you just can't figure out, remember that you can always ask us for help at support@realmotion.com.